Hi everyone, this is Tanya from Flying Dog Studio. Thank you so much for joining me as I attempt another piece in the Beatrix Potter style art. So as you can see, I have already drawn my piece out. This is going to be another iris. This iris, the reference photo, was graciously given to me by my nephew. He took this apparently in his yard. I'm assuming that's where he took this. He has some beautiful irises and he took some fabulous pictures. This one is kind of special, and you'll see when we get to the full view of it, once I get everything lined in, that the angle he took this gave us some foreshortening on this piece. So the flower on top, because it's closer to us, is going to appear larger than the flower and the stem as they go down. Those are going to appear too small for the flower, but it is just a perspective called foreshortening. So not typically what you would see in Beatrix Potter's work, but I loved it, so we're working on it here. I am tracing this in with, and actually I should say drawing over my lines with my Sailor Fude de Mannen pen. I got this at Jet Pens. I'll put that link down below because some of you have asked about that. So I'll put that link below along with the type ink that I use. I got it all at the same place, and I'm not sponsored by them. I get nothing from these links, but if you enjoy the way this pen seems to work, and I'll tell you I do enjoy it, then you will have those links so you can go and check that out for yourself. This is a 40-degree angle on this pen. Fude actually means bent, and it has a bent 40-degree angle on that. So as you can see with the lines, I am using the weighted lines, so I have thick and thin lines, and I also have the space between the lines. So those are some things that are pretty typical with Beatrix Potter's work. And if you're just joining us for this and you're saying this is not Beatrix Potter, she does little bunny rabbits and cute little animals. Yes, she did do those, but she also did wonderful botanical art, and some of her mushroom pieces are just fantastic, and she did landscape. She did all sorts of things. So I'm concentrating right now on just the botanical stuff. So now that we have it drawn in, I am using my Winsor & Newton mop brush. I have some tea. This is the blueberry green tea, and in order to give it the aged look like hers, because in my last piece, and if you didn't get to see the last piece I did in this, I'm going to link that down below for you. But what I like to do is start with a little tea to age the piece, and that makes it look a little more like hers. In the last piece I talked about, my colors were really too bright for the work that you see from Miss Potter online. And I will also put the link down below to the Victoria and Albert Museum website, because you can take a look at some of her art on there. You won't find this piece on there since this is a personal reference, but if you would like to draw this on your own, or you'd like to have my drawing, I can draw that out for you and put it on my blog. Just let me know in the comments below. But for this piece, in order to tone the colors down, because I felt my other one was a bit too bright, I'm going to be using the Derwent Graphitint. And I've already kind of done a mapping of the colors here, and I'm going to put that down below if you want to see where I swatch those colors. I have my size 2 and my size 8 round brushes from the Royal and Langnickel Zen series, 1 cup of water, and then a microfiber cloth. And there is our reference. And I'm sorry it's so small. I couldn't get it any larger, but I thought I'd put it up here while I'm putting the colors out to give you an idea of where we are going. So I'm starting with a little autumn brown, because you can see there's some pink in there, kind of a rusty pink, and that autumn brown is actually a little more red than brown. And then I have some aubergine for our purple, and that's where it's going to be different than the actual reference piece, because my purples are not going to be quite as bright. So that's going to tone the piece down. I'm telling you, I looked at it and I thought, I really want to use my Winsor & Newton watercolors on this, but I wanted to kind of keep the colors muted like hers, so I'm going to use this because I really love using these. And if you didn't catch it, I have some russet at the top there on the right hand side in the little palette, and then some meadow down below. Now my paper is dry, and I'm working wet on dry, and you'll notice that I get some color on there It's just a little too dark. So I just tap my water, and then you can tap your cloth to the side and it kind of tones it down. But these two will blend together. So I have the autumn brown on there and some of that aubergine, and just because they are both wet, even though the paper is dry, they will go ahead and work together. These are graphite, they're not typical watercolors. So I'm going to be putting a layer on where I'm allowing the colors to kind of mesh together, and once they dry, I'm going to come back and put another layer on top in certain areas. So some of the areas where it is lighter or lighter pink, I am just using more water on my brush. I'm kind of letting the color run out so that I can just move it around a little bit and get some lighter areas. And then I'm going to come back in, as you see here, as I did with the other petal, I'm going to just drop those colors in while they're wet and let them run together. And if you have watched some of my other videos doing Beatrix Potter work, you would have heard me say that I feel as if she used sort of a dry brush technique. And in this, I keep talking about water, water, water. That is because these are the Graphitint and they behave quite a bit differently than regular watercolors. So I can't come back and put water or put more color on top of these areas where I've just painted, because if I do, it's going to lift all of that up. So it's a little bit different than the regular watercolors. I'm going to have to use more water. So that's going to vary from her type of art just a little bit. And I shouldn't say type of art, perhaps I should say her method. So it's a little bit different than her method, but she didn't use Graphitint. She would have been using watercolors. And in order to emulate what hers looked like after it has been aged, that's why I chose this, so we could have just a little bit more muted colors and not quite as bright. So I'm going to be quiet for a little bit and let you watch me work, and then I'll hop back on in a minute and we'll talk some more. I think this is a really good angle where you can see how the top flower, even though it would be the same size as that second flower in real life, how the second flower looks smaller, and then the leaves down below look even smaller. They look too small for the plant. So that's the foreshortening I was talking about on here. I also wanted to mention that the paper I'm using is a 140 pound, 100% cotton paper, and this is cold pressed. Now, we are coming up to the point where I didn't get this. I wanted to put my colors separate over in the wells at the side, and I didn't get everything out because I failed to notice that there are some areas, I didn't put the green out at all, but there are some areas where the plant is just a little bit, well, at the top there's some buds that are coming out, and to the right of the stem, just below that bottom flower, there is a little bit of a dead area. So right now I'm going to need some meadow and ocean blue to make the greens that I need, and then I'm going to be using some port straight out of the well. I'm not going to be putting onto the palette at the side. So I just want to tell you that ahead of time so you can be watching for that. So I'm going to come back in and drop these colors in on the stem. It's going to be more of a yellow green, and then I'm going to be coming back in and changing that just a bit. At this point, we have almost the entire bottom layer on, that bottom wash, and then we're going to come back, let this dry for about 20 minutes, and oh look, if you make a mistake, just use your ring finger to kind of wipe it off. I do that through the whole thing. I'm almost done with this layer, and then I'm going to let it dry for about 20 minutes. Doesn't take it long to dry because I'm not using a terrible amount of water, but I want it to be completely dry before I add another layer on, because remember, it will pull that color up. As you can see, I've added some juniper on here. The aubergine is more of a blue violet, and the juniper has a little bit of red in it. We're still going to have to use some of our other colors in here to change the purples just a little bit, because I didn't have those bright colors in here. I'm going to want to add a little bit of variation in my purples, so I'm going to be adding those on top. Now, I had mixed in this well before. If you'll think back to the beginning, I started with yellow, that meadow, and then I added the ocean blue to it, and that gave me a yellow green. I'm wanting a blue green now, so I started with the darker color. I started with the ocean blue and then added the meadow to it. So what you're going to see in this part is me coming back with the same colors except for that juniper, and then you'll also see me add some of the other colors around and make a few different shades of purple here and there. But I'm just going to be taking the same colors and I'm going to be adding it on top so that I can get some more depth in the flower. It was at this point that my daughter said, "It's finished, right?" And I'm like, "No, I have to add the second layer on." She said, "Let me take a picture so I'll remember what it looks like." So she really liked it before I added this layer on. She hadn't seen this layer yet because she was afraid it was going to lose that pastel look, but it needed this on so that I could create depth, because the stem of the flower, for instance, was a yellow green. That is a good wash on there, but I had some areas that are blue green. I have some where there's a little bit of sort of a dead area, so I needed to come with a russet and put that in those areas. I needed to add some more port in there in order to push the stem back. Right now everything's on the same flat level. Some of it needs to go back and some of it needs to come forward. So that's the necessity of this layer. The thing about the Graphitint is if you have some areas that are supposed to be light and you add too much color on top just because you want more color, all you're going to do is darken it, and that's the nature of the graphite. I'll also mention, if you've never watched me do these videos before with Graphitint, you'll notice that I will swirl it quite often. I will swirl my paint over in the paint palette, and that's because the graphite in it will kind of separate out when it sits there for a while. So when you swirl it, you're mixing that all back in with the pigment. So just something to watch for on this side. So I'm going to be quiet, let you watch me finish this up, and we'll hop back on at the end. just a few more areas to touch up, and then the iris will be finished. I do believe, as compared to my last iris that I did in the Beatrix Potter style, this one does more match her muted colors and her color scheme. However, oh, in my heart of hearts, I wish that I had a little brighter purple, but you know, with graphitint, you're going to have that graphite in there and it just makes everything a little bit darker. But all in all, I enjoyed this piece. I hope you enjoyed watching. I appreciate your being here. I'm always happy when you show up and when you give me feedback in the comments. I love the feedback. I love it when we work together and learn things as a community. So remember, if you would like my reference photo on this or would like my drawing, I can draw that out for you on Procreate and give you a really good solid line drawing. If you would like to trace that, or if you would like to draw it on your own, I can put those on my blog. Just let me know if you're wanting to follow along and I will do that for you. So I will be doing some more of this Beatrix Potter style. I'm also going to be trying another one of her styles, so be looking for that in the future. I also have some Impressionist art coming up. I hope you will join me, but until then, I will see you in the next one.